Hello everyone, it is the 7th of June and this is our first garden worm tower that we put into action. Now that the weather's warming up, I am wondering whether these black lids are going to prove a problem to, I don't know, put too much heat into the system. I'm not sure. We'll see if the worms are avoiding coming to the top because they are certainly warm. So let's take a look. You can see our leaf matter here that we put in to bolster the level, but you can also see that the level has dropped quite a bit, and that's why the worms are in the leaves. That is why the matter is dropping. As there are worms right here. Not sure if you can see them, but that worm there, was very active. Wiggled away from me too quickly. Was a juvenile, a young juvenile. There's a worm right there. Again, wiggling away, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. But the worms are up here in this leaf matter. That looks like something sprouting. Oh, it's our leek. It's our leek trying to sprout, the ends of a leek. But worms, as you might be able to see that little red tail or head wiggling there. That is also a young worm, which means these worm towers are now having next generation worms, because I did not put worms that small into these towers to launch them. So they must be been in here long enough to lay cocoons. There's some worms there to lay cocoons and have the cocoons hatch already, which is great. All right, there's some, and there's a cocoon right there. So yes, so we definitely have, so if you can see, there's a cocoon right there on the end of that matter. Those are some asparagus stems, obviously. Well, maybe those are the ends of the leeks that Landon cut up a leek, and he cleaned off some of the outer leaves right here and put them in the tower. So you can see the worms are through this material, and you can also, if you're a worm farmer, you can also see that the material itself is starting to look like it's accumulating castings. As I dig down, more worms right there on the fork. Beside the fork, another cocoon. Several worms, actually. And so we launched these towers with several different inputs of worms. Probably put about 75 to 100 from my indoor worm towers into these. So they would have been largely red wigglers. But we also put some wild worms that we were finding. The Vancouver Island special worm that I probably talk way too much about. And as well as, wild compost worms that we found in manure and compost. So that is one of our Vancouver Island worms with that beautiful, with that beautiful orange clitellum. All right. Okay, so they are in here, and this material is looking really good. So what do you do? Oh, and there's a baby. There's a baby. So there's the next generation of worms coming up in this system. So what do you do when your system in the garden tower starts, looking like it's worm castings? I'm not saying this is by any means there yet. You can see there's still a lot of cardboard visible, obviously the needles, and on the top you saw some leaf matter and that leek. There's our cocoon. So what do you do when the garden tower starts to look more and more like a finished worm bin? Well, I've been thinking about that. Do I just let it process down, probably stop feeding it, and then at some point just bait out the worms, perhaps, scoop out the castings and just distribute them around my plants? that's probably the most reasonable solution. Bait out the worms so that I will put most of them back in the bucket rather than just distribute them around the garden, because I may or may not distribute the material right adjacent to the worm tower itself. I may distribute it a little bit further afield, and worms don't go very far. Various reports that I've read said they go in about a 1 meter or 1 yard 3 inch radius from their home base, if you like, where their food is. They might go out and in about a meter around. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I don't want to have my worms going too far away from where I know they can get compost material, because although we do put compost in our beds here, our raised beds, this by far is the density of food for the worms. Anyway, let's check in on our garden tower today. I think everything's doing great. I'm going to keep an eye on these temperatures in this lid, because this is very toasty. We don't have hot temperatures on the coast here, but I think the black in combination with the full sun here in the afternoon, that is going to be warm. Definitely too warm if any worm should happen to be on that lid when it starts to warm up. And just on cue, the cloud comes over and it starts to get cooler. All right, take care, everyone.